Okay, so before this video starts, I've got to say something. I've been editing this video and I realized that audio was pretty fucked up. So I tried to fix it and it should be fixed now, but if it's still fucked up, then please write it in the comments and I'll try to fix it for the next video. And we'll get on with the video now. Last place, of course, no one else but Nikita Mazepin. He was just way too slow and he just made way too many mistakes in the first 11 races. That's it. Like, there's not much more to say about him. He was just way too slow. For me, the second worst driver of the season so far is Nicholas Latifi. Of course, he's ahead of George in the standings, but it's nothing new as George always gets outscored by his teammates. I think Latifi has indeed improved a lot from last season, but he's still way too slow considering his teammate is always putting in Q2 and sometimes even in Q3. Also, it's usually George Russell that's fighting for the points in that Williams car. P18 for me, it's Mick Schumacher. Obviously, he's getting the best out of the car, but he's still just doing way too many mistakes, and he also fancies crashing the car in practice quite a lot as well. That's why I would only put him in P18 and not higher on this list. P17 and P16 on the list are both Alpha drivers, Antonio Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen. Again, not much to say about them, both are pretty similar, and the only time when they are on camera is usually when they get weird penalties. So I can't really put them any higher or lower because I don't really know what to say about them. They're just pretty quiet. Okay, P15 is the flop of the season for me so far, and it's a Japanese superhero, Yuki Tsunoda. He's very slow in qualifying compared to Pierre, and he often likes crashing in qualifying as well, like in Imola, Baku, and France as well, which is why I only put him in P15 on the list here. Lance Stroll, okay, this is a difficult one. Obviously, he has been better than Seb at the start of the season, but since Monaco, actually, he has been a lot worse than Seb, and I don't really remember him having like a really good race since Monaco, which is why I only put him in 14th on the list. B13 is definitely a controversial call, but I can explain this one. In my perspective, Valtteri has been a big disappointment this season. He would usually win one or two races every season, but this year was just never even close to winning. Of course, he's got one more competitor this year, but he still underperformed a lot, and he had three shocking races in Imola, Baku, and recently he also played a bowling game at Turn 1 in Hungary, taking out the Red Bulls, which might secure him that Mercedes seat for next year, who knows. And in P12, it's race winner Esteban Ocon. He has been pretty decent in the first part of the season, but then Alonso awaked, and since then he has been outperformed by him in almost every race, apart from Hungary, obviously. But Alonso was great there as well, so they are pretty similar, but I think Alonso still got the edge over him. P11 is a little bit of a disappointment, as he has been really good in the past, but I still put Daniel high up in P11 because he still manages to secure a lot of points in some races, like at Imola, Spain, and Silverstone. And I really hope his second half of the season will be better because he's an amazing driver and he's in a really good car as well. So it should really be better. Otherwise, he might actually lose that McLaren seat and potentially his Formula One career as well. And the first point scorer is Fernando Alonso. Many people thought he would be a flop after 2 years of absence, but he has been really good this season and he has delivered what he promised. What I really admire about him is that he learned not to be toxic to his own team, as he has been in the past at McLaren and Ferrari. P9 is fan favorite and the most humble guy on the grid, Sebastian Vettel. He has struggled at the beginning of the season, though since his astonishing P5 finish in Monaco, he's had really good performances, like for example his two podiums in Baku and Hungary as well. He did get disqualified obviously, but he still finished P2 on the track, so I'll let that count. P8 is Mr. Saturday, George Russell. 10 Q2 appearances and 2 Q3 appearances in the second worst car on the grid just speaks for itself, really. He has been amazing once again this season, and I really hope he'll get that Mercedes seat for next year, because he really deserves that one. P7 is tire expert Sergio Perez. He was decent this season, still made a lot of mistakes, but I think he's been lucky as well. Like in many races, he has been stuck behind other drivers and couldn't really get past them. But he's of course shown really good performances in Portimao, France, and Styria. Well, and his win in Baku was also amazing, of course. And I'm sure he'll deliver what Red Bull want from him in the remaining races. Okay, P6 is Pierre Gasly. He has just like last season been amazing and really consistent this year. He has qualified in the top 6 8 times in 11 races this year, while his teammate has not made it into Q2 5 times. Pierre deserves a much better car, but there aren't many options on the grid right now, which is really unfortunately for him, because he really deserves a much better car. Okay, coming to the top 5 drivers of the first part of the season, in P5 I chose smooth operator Carlos Sainz. He's had high expectations coming to Ferrari, but he really delivered so far, and he's up there with Charles, and he even is 3 points ahead of him after 11 races, but of course Charles has had bad luck, but he's still ahead of him, you know. In P4 I chose the other Ferrari driver, Charles Leclerc. His season has been pretty similar to 2020, but this time he's got a really competitive car and teammate in Carlos Sainz. They're pushing each other to the maximum and they've been working well together, which wasn't really the case with Sebastian. Charles has really improved his race pace this season and he even came close to winning in Monaco and Silverstone. And of course he has had 2 pole positions as well, don't forget that. So yeah, P4 on the list, Charles Leclerc. Coming to the podium places, P3 is no one else but 7-time world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton. Lewis has had a more difficult season in 2021. He has, as usual, delivered absolute amazing performances in a lot of races, but he's also made a few mistakes this year, and he's been pretty lucky to be leading the championship ahead of Max. P2 is Lewis's biggest rival this year, Max Verstappen. Max has been almost perfect this season with amazing races in Imola, for example, and both Styria and Austria. He's been very unlucky too, though. He lost 70 points, all not his fault, in Baku, Silverstone, and Hungary. And yet, he's still only 8 points behind Lewis, which is honestly just remarkable considering he lost a lot of points in those 3 races. And the best driver this season so far is, drumroll, Lando Norris. Lando has made the biggest step up this year. He's not only been the most consistent driver, but he's also had 3 podiums this year in the McLaren. He's also made very little mistakes and he's really fast in qualifying and in race pace as well. What's remarkable though, and what really proves that he's been the best this season, is that he's actually 3rd in the championship, only behind Lewis and Max, and ahead of 1 Mercedes and 1 Red Bull. Honestly, that's just crazy. He's definitely my driver of the year so far. Flop of the season is Tsunoda. He massively underperformed considering his very good first race in Bahrain and the big expectations that everyone had from him. The biggest surprise of this year is Sainz. He was almost immediately up there with Charles, who has been dominating Seb last year, and Sainz is even ahead of him in the championship. So he's definitely my biggest surprise of the year so far. The biggest disappointment of the season is of course Daniel Ricciardo. He was definitely the biggest disappointment as I expected him to beat Lando, but he's actually nowhere near as good as Lando this year, which is why he's been such a big disappointment because he's such a good driver. He's proven it a lot of times. He's a 7-time race winner, but this year he's just been very bad. Thanks for looking at this. I'll put the whole list somewhere at the end of the video, and if you've got a different opinion, then please leave a comment and tell me. I'll reply to it most likely. And if you really liked how this video was made, it would be really nice if you'd show up again. Thank you.
Father in the crib, that bitch want the tip, that bitch want my drip. I pull up on these hoes, I'm riding that spaceship. These hoes they want my pole, these hoes want the little dick. This bitch want young cat, he on the track. Bitch give me back, tatted on the back, tatted on the neck, carry caught the back. They bitches want my drug. I pull up on these hoes.